Hi, my name's James O'Neill, doing this video co-on United Kingdom. This is going to, believe it or not, this video is going to go all over. And it's about financial shenanigans. And it's about something that's going on and they're trying to keep the lid on it. And have you noticed that Michael Gove, his wife's divorcing him, Sarah Vine, from the Daily Mail. So you got Matt Hancock, who was going to be, who thought he could be Prime Minister. He's finished. You got Michael Gove, little busy Michael, Govey, little Govey, that little man with the big ears who thinks he could be Prime Minister and we all fucking love him. Well, he split up with his wife, just like Matt Hancock, and he's very quiet and nothing's coming out. But there's two scenarios that I've seen and heard. One is he's gay, which if he's gay, he's gay. But it's got serious with his boyfriend. So the wife's had to get the Evo. But yeah. Or the other one is, what was the other one? Gay. Yeah, he's having an affair, but it's with a man. Do you know what? I forgot what the other reason was. Fucking hell, it's gone out of my head. Just shows you my mind wanders. Anyway, so things are changing, aren't they, fast? But I'm going to tell you, do you remember 2 years ago, I did a video about Banker Dave? There was a series on Channel 4 where this guy from Burnley, because he'd done well for himself, he wanted to give something back to the community. So what he did was, he wanted to regenerate the community. He wanted to help people help themselves. And the banks aren't lending money to poor people. You know, somebody could have a good idea. It doesn't matter how good your idea is. If you're poor, unless you've got something that you can put up as security that they can come and take, they will charge you a high interest, but they still want something that they come and take. In fact, they'll charge you an high interest rate over 5 years, and they like it if you pay for 3 years and then you fail or something happens. You can get cancer. Your business fails because you've got cancer. Well, they've had 3 years payments off you. Now they come and take your house or the business. So they don't lend to poor. So this Dave wanted to set a bank up because I've told you you've got the ratio, and Dave never explained this because I did these videos and Dave never once explained why he wanted to set a bank up, because a bank can lend money. It can lend imaginary money. And he went to London and he tried to be declared a bank by the Bank of England, and they wouldn't let him do it. They wouldn't let him set up a bank in Burnley Accrington, to lend money to ordinary poor people if they had a good idea. And he says, I can judge a good idea because I'm poor. I was poor and I made myself into a millionaire. So I know what it needs. I know the type of person, and I'd like to help that type of person. Anyway, the Bank of England won't let him become a bank. And the reason why he wanted to be a bank was because if he put £100,000 of his own money into this bank that he created, he could then create £900,000 of imaginary money on the computer. And it's that money what he lends to people. His £100,000 stays in the bank. But he could also get generous friends to deposit money in his bank. So if he had 10 generous friends who each deposited £100,000 in the bank, he could then create £1 million. No, he could create, yeah, that's million. So he could then create 9 million from his 10 generous friends, £100,000, you see. So that's why he wanted to become a bank. And then with all this imaginary money, he was going to help people with ambition in his community of Burnley. But the Bank of England weren't having that. So I'm going to tell you about Greensill Bank, because this is what I'm going to talk about. Greensill Bank. There's this big scandal, and it's in this country, it's in Australia, and it's in America. And I'm going to tell you the people it's caught out, the people who's been sucked in. And this guy, Greensill, he set up a bank. And I think it was in Australia or it was in Saudi Arabia, but it's a bit murky. I've not watched all the videos yet, but I've been collecting gear on him for about 10 days because I knew he was going to make a video, and then something slotted in today. And I thought, yep, there it is, make the video today. Because I did the video the other day about money and blah, blah, blah. So this guy, on his own, sets up a bank. somewhere, some country has allowed him to declare himself as a bank. And then he's had investors who've put money in to the bank. And I've got a feeling it's Saudi Arabian billionaires. They've put money in. Or billionaires have put money in to his bank. They've put like 30, 40, 50 million. And then because they put 50 million in, because he's now a bank, this Australian guy, this bloke, this man, this human being, this entity, Greensill, I think his name's Tim. Because these billionaires have put 50 million into his bank, he's now allowed to create 9 times 50 million. So that's 450 million, yeah? No, it's 4.5 billion. You see, 50 million times 9, 9 5 45, 4.5 billion. Or is it whatever? Yeah, it's 4,500, so that's 4 billion, 4.5 billion. And that's what I think has happened. Well, that's what Dave wanted to do in Burnley, with the ambition of helping the local people. But this guy has been set up as a bank, and then people have put money in. He's a front man. It's like a mafia. It's a mafia thing. It's like a front for a business. So he's then been allowed to create billions and billions of pounds electronically that he has lent out to people. And he's done it in Australia, he's done it in America, and he's done it here in this country. Now, I'll tell you about this country first. David Cameron, he put David Cameron on the payroll and he put him on shares. And he said, when this goes public, I'm going to make my bank public. It's so successful. I'm lending so much money to billionaires in Australia, the UK, elsewhere, and America. And he said, I'm getting all this like money back, you know, finance payments, interest payments. This bank is successful, David. David Cameron, our ex-Prime Minister. He says, remember George Osborne, he's Chancellor of the Exchequer. He gets £750,000 a year off BlackRock since a year after he left. Well, David Cameron, he slid in with Greensill. He's on money, and in one of the videos I was watching before, he was asked the question, did you use Greensill's, one of their many private jets, to fly to Newquay, to your third home? Well, I don't remember doing that, he said, but it will be on record if I did do that. And if I did do that, he said it'd be declared on the tax, and I would be liable for tax on using a private jet for a private journey to my holiday home with my wife and kids. And but if I'll check my records, and he's going on trips on their private jet. He was fucking getting all sorts. He was having money thrown at him. He was given like an option for shares that when it went public, he would have got £60 million. He won't tell you what his salary is because he can't remember. He was up in the Commons. I've got videos of him. Now they went and got him, and he was phoning. That was the other reason. Michael Gove, one of the people he was pestering to talk to Greenhill to allow these loans, because when this lockdown, Greenhill have been loaning money out to billionaires. I've told you, the middle class, you look on the poor. Oh, look at the poor. They're on the welfare. That's what's bankrupting this country. It's not. It's the billionaires that are on welfare. The banks on quantitative easing, bailing them out. The loans that are going to disappear with. I told you ages ago. When it's all over, loads of businesses are going to go bankrupt. Well, some of them are failing even before the COVID's over. Because the financial model of Greensill is so corrupt, it's coming out before. Well, Michael Gove was one of the people that David Cameron was fucking pestering. Now, all of a sudden, his wife's divorcing him. They're going to separate the property and she's going to get the house. It's either that or a gay lover. Well, personally, I'd go for the financial shenanigans that are all going to come out with Greensill. Because what's happened is Sanjeev Gupta, an Indian billionaire, has took loads of money for his steel mills and his steelworks in this country as loans for the COVID relief. And it's all fell apart because it's corrupt. His business model for these steel mills, these ironworks, steelworks, is corrupt. The business model is corrupt. And one of the investors in Greensill has took over Greensill because of the debts that they owe. Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse, one of the financial powerhouses on the planet, has took over Greensill. They took all the debts and they've declared them theirs, and they're calling in the debts from billionaires. Credit Suisse are calling in the debts like a debt collector. So in this country, you've got Sajid, what's his fucking name? Let me just check his name, because I want to say it right. Sanjeev Gupta. He's bought all these ironworks, steelworks. He's got this business model, you see. And what they're doing is they're buying up these steelworks cheap, like in this country. When they fail, they come in and buy them for £1. Remember, like David Cameron and what's her name, Fishface. We can announce that this billionaire has bought this steelworks. Well, they bought them for £1. And then what they do is they load them up with debt, and then they loot them. It's just a business model. It's like Sir Philip Green. So this Sajid Gupta, he took out a load of loans with this Greensill, and he took 6 out for was it 800 million or something? He took like 700 million pounds worth of loans in 6 days. And then all of a sudden the government said, whoa, you've got to stop, because the government are liable for 80% of these loans if they fail. Let's say this steelworks, this Sajid Gupta's steelworks all fail. They've got this, like, say, £500 million debt, what he went and borrowed money off Greensill. Then he's took a big slice himself. Oh, he's took a huge slice of that 500 million. But the steelworks are liable. You see? It's like Sir Philip Green. This is what Sir Philip Green did. He stopped paying the pensions, but he paid himself a dividend. Or he paid it his wife because it was all in her name. You see? Now this Sajid Gupta has done the same. He's gone and borrowed money from this Greensill. But the government are liable if Sajid's steelworks fail. Just like the government are liable for the pensions of people from British Home Stores with Sir Philip Green. So it turns out I kept something from the other week. But I'll tell you what it says today. There it is. That's today's paper. Tax paper could lose 335 million over Greensill's loans. Now, it's not that they're going to lose the money. They've got to pay it to Credit Suisse, because Credit Suisse is the debt collector. So that is 80%. 335 million is 80%. So it's round about 500 million that Credit Suisse are claiming off Greensill. Well, our government is liable for that money. So Credit Suisse is going to get paid by the government £335 million worth of taxpayers' money. That's the tip of the iceberg, I'm telling you. I've been looking at this. So Credit Suisse are liable, want that money. They want it. It's theirs because of the way it works. It's the way the system works. They are now the debt collector. This guy, Tim Greensill, he's not liable for any debts anymore. He's bankrupt. His bank went bankrupt. This bank that he created. Yet Dave couldn't set up a bank in Burnley. Bank of England won't let him. But someone has allowed this guy to set up a bank. And then billionaires have put money in, which has then created imaginary money that he has lent out to them. And then they've stole that money. They've stole imaginary money that's somehow become real. Sanjeev Gupta. So you've got steelworks here now in this country that are going to go bust. Credit Suisse are going to demand the money from the government, and the government's going to hand it over. Our government is going to give Credit Suisse 335 million, and that's the tip of the iceberg. Because of Sanjeev Gupta. This is from June the 24th. June the 24th this is from. Listen to this. Sanjeev Gupta has 6 weeks to save his steel and coal business in Australia. You see, he's been and bought a load of crap steel mills and coal mines, and he's loaded them up with debt. And then he's took out a dividend just like Sir Philip Green. And he's borrowed the money from that fucking guy. That guy. That man who created a bank and had David Cameron working for him. And the Australian government have done what we've done. They're liable for the loans. Sanjeev Gupta has 6 weeks to save his steel and coal business in Australia. In other words, try and find a solution. The metals magnates, GFG Alliance. See, he's got all this Australia, this country, and all over the world. It's an alliance, but they're all separate. Take my word for it, they're all separate. Has reached a standstill agreement with Credit Suisse. So Credit Suisse have given 6 weeks. And if Sanjeev Gupta's not sorted out the same situation in Australia, what's here? In Australia, Credit Suisse have given him 6 weeks. Now that was June the 24th to sort it out. Otherwise, they're like any debt collector, they're going to come and repossess the debt. But they will take control of the coal mines, the steelworks, but they'll also take. The government of Australia has guaranteed the debts, just like we've guaranteed the debts. So they're going to have to pay Credit Suisse hundreds of millions of Aussie dollars. Has reached a standstill agreement with Credit Suisse. In other words, it's on pause, that would allow him to refinance. So he's got to go and get more debt from somewhere at a higher interest rate, because whoever he approaches to borrow money to clear this with Credit Suisse, they know he's desperate, so they're going to charge him a higher interest rate. Allow him to refinance the division. CFG has been in turmoil since March, when its largest lender, Greensill Capital, went bust. See, Credit Suisse lent about £860 million to GFG through Greensill. Credit Suisse lent the Aussies, lent this Gupta, £860 million in Australia alone. And then Credit Suisse have, through Greensill, lent 500-600 million here in the UK. But we're liable for 80% of that loan. In Australia, it's the same thing. So Credit Suisse is now taking assets. Remember what I said about assets in the last video? This is a way of taking assets. But it was all done through imaginary money, because banks are allowed to create 9 for 1. And also, you've got the Swiss government, the French government, the Aussie government. They're all giving the banks trillions of dollars of credit notes. In the UK, we're giving the banks billions and billions of pounds of just a credit note. They put that in the bank, and then the bank, if they have 1 billion in a credit note off the bank, that's to see you through tough times. £1 billion credit note, not £1 billion in money on pallets. It's just a credit note. That bank, as soon as that credit note goes into that bank can create £9 billion imaginary money on the computer that they lend out. And that's what Greensill has been doing, because somebody somewhere allowed this man to become a bank. Now, I'm going to put a list up of videos for you to watch. And it's in America as well. The governor of Virginia, Governor Jim Justice, no longer a billionaire after $850 million debt to Greensill. Now, the governor of Virginia, who is a billionaire, for some reason, he's guaranteed the loans. You know, like the Australian government's guaranteed the loans and the UK government has guaranteed the loans. Well, in America, $850 million this one man has guaranteed the governor of Virginia, because it's a big coal mining area and whatever. And he's borrowed the money from Greensill. He's liable for the loans. Now, Credit Suisse are taking him to court for $850 million. And they're going to seize the assets, the coal mines and the steelworks in America. So Credit Suisse are taking the assets that were all loaned imaginary money in America, Australia and this country in one swoop. All through that man setting up a bank and creating a fraudulent lending system. So I've got videos below. 1, 2, 3, the UK, Australia 1 and 2, America 1 and 2 and 3. So I've got all these videos for you to go look through. Now, do you know what this reminds me of? The Papal Bank. When the bank went bust and Roberto Calvi. Roberto Calvi was the head of the Vatican Bank in the 70s. And what he was doing was, because the Vatican had a bank, let's say the Vatican has got, back in the 70s, it had billions and billions of pounds. Because it was a bank, he was allowed to create 4 to 1 in them days. So if it had £100 billion back in the 70s, the Papal Bank, £100 billion, it was allowed to create £900 billion in imaginary money, 400 million, because it's 4 to 1 then them days. And the Vatican Bank used to lend money out like any other bank. Well, the head of the bank, Roberto Calvi, he was lending money out to people like Sajid Gupta. The head of the Vatican Bank, Roberto Calvi, was lending money out to these people in America, the UK, Italy, Argentina. He was lending money to these, and he was basically Masonic lodges. So they were borrowing money, and then whatever they borrowed the money for was a fraud, and it collapsed and it fell apart. But it wasn't worth what the money had been lent, and the money had disappeared. So the Vatican Bank lost $1 billion in the 70s. And that's when money lending was only 1 to 4. So the Vatican Bank just lost money just like that. And it wasn't viable. Just like his bank ain't viable. And Roberto Calvi, the head of the Vatican Bank, who lived in Rome, who like his offices were in the Vatican, disappeared. The head of the Vatican Bank disappeared as the scandal of all these loans was emerging. Just like the scandal for him is emerging. All of a sudden, Michael Gove's having a divorce from his wife. David Cameron's fighting for his like political memory. You know, and there's all these other figures being dragged into it. Credit Suisse is fucking coming for everything. Credit Suisse don't give a shit who you are. It's going to take everything. Don't give a shit about UK taxpayers. It don't give a shit about American taxpayers. This Jim Justice. It don't give a shit about Australia. It's going to seize assets. This is an asset. This is an asset taking situation, which is what I've been talking about. Now, Roberto Calvi disappeared off the face of the earth from Rome. 4 days later, he was found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge in London, the city of London. Blackfriars Bridge, where those 3 terrorists jumped out of the car and was stabbing everybody. And that Millwall fan was fucking saying, I'm fucking Millwall, I'm not running. That Blackfriars Bridge. I'm sure it's the same bridge. So Roberto Calvi, in the early 70s, he's found hanging from the bridge 4 days later. There's no cameras. Even though it's the 70s and you've got the IRA and London was the most secure city in the world, there was no video evidence of the Blackfriars Bridge or anything of him walking up to the bridge and hanging himself, tying his rope to the bridge, putting it around his neck and then jumping off. Even carrying a rope through London. There's no video of him. There's no parked car. There's nothing. He's just hanging from fucking Blackfriars Bridge. They found him in the morning. Suicide. Years later, during when Tony Blair was Prime Minister, because this is in my book. Where's my fucking book where I want it? It's in my book, this. Anyway, years later, there's an inquest, or there's an appeal inquest, like, you know, and anyway, it came out, it wasn't suicide. He had his hands tied behind his back and he had bricks in his pocket. Now, how the heck did the City of London police, who had a separate police force from the Met, how did the police come to the conclusion it was suicide when he had his hands tied behind his back? How did the coroner go along with the police conclusion that it was suicide? Well, that was never investigated. Now that's the banking system being looted. The Vatican Bank is exactly what's happened with this guy. This guy has set up a bank. Somebody has allowed him to set up a bank. Somebody has given him the paperwork saying he is a bank. Billionaires have put money in, which then allows them to create 9 imaginary for whatever they put in. They can take their money out then. Once that money's out on loan, they can take their money out. Credit Suisse have put money into it, knowing that it's all a big fraudulent scheme. So, and they know that they might lose a couple of quid technically on the loans, but they then seize all the assets in America, Australia, in this country. That man is the equivalent of Roberto Calvi of the Papal Bank, the Vatican Bank, in the 70s. I don't know the name of the book, but you want to go check it up. I read it years ago. One bloke did a great big book on it, you know. It's big news, but it's all forgotten now. You want to check out Roberto Calvi, Suicide, Blackfriars Bridge. Find a book on Amazon. But check these videos out. Just think, Australia, $800 million in Australia, £860 million in Australia. We've got like £800 million in this country, and the taxpayers in Australia, they're going to pay it. And in America, for some reason, this Governor Jim Justice has got to pay it because he's guaranteed it. But you can bet there's a fiddle there, you see. Just like with the Vatican Bank, all these people were named, and they just like disappeared, no responsibility. They just walked away from the catastrophe. And the fall guy was Roberto Calvi, and he was murdered. Somehow they got him from Rome to the City of London, and somehow they got him on Blackfriars Bridge. They tied a rope round his neck, they tied his hands behind his back, they put bricks in his pocket, and then they threw him over the fucking bridge. And nobody saw anything. But that was a statement, that. Getting him from Rome to the City of London, the square mile, was a sign. It was symbology. It was Masonic symbology. That was pure Masons. Now the Masons have slightly changed. The powerful people, it's slightly changed, but it's the same principle as the Masons and what they did to the Vatican Bank. This Greensill is exactly the same as what happened to the Vatican Bank.